he conquered Formula One.
But again, Montoya loses speed in the middle part, and here comes Michael. Michael gets back into Montoya, and Schumacher retakes the lead.
Rewrote history with 7 world titles.
Michael Schumacher gets his 7th Formula One World Championship.
But then, far from the racetrack, one accident changed everything forever. And that tragedy is impossible to understand unless we first look at how Michael Schumacher became the most dominant driver the sport had ever seen. It all began in Herth, Germany, on January 3rd, 1969. Michael Schumacher wasn't born into wealth or privilege. His story started on a small karting track that his father, Rolf, maintained. His mother, Elizabeth, ran the canteen, and while other children played, little Michael raced in a go-kart built from spare parts. At just 4 years old, he wasn't just driving, he was already competing, already winning, and showing a hunger that set him apart. Unlike the other kids, Michael wasn't here to play. He was here to conquer. From the very start, he was fast. But more than that, he was calculating, studying corners, memorizing braking points, analyzing opponents. The boy was not learning racing, he was building an obsession. The birth of a legend had begun. Before Michael Schumacher ever touched a Formula One car, his battlegrounds were far smaller. As a boy, he spent every spare hour at his father's karting track. While most kids raced for fun, Michael treated every lap as life or death. By the age of 6, he was already competing in local karting races against children older, taller, stronger, yet he still won. Not because he had the best equipment, his karts were often made together from scraps, but his mind was sharper. He studied rivals, memorized every braking point, and calculated risks that others couldn't even see. Through the 1980s, his talent became impossible to ignore. He dominated the German and European karting circuits, earned titles and a reputation. But talent alone wasn't enough. Racing was expensive, and the Schumacher family was far from rich. To keep racing, Michael often relied on sponsors, support from local clubs, and his father's endless sacrifices. Every victory was not just about speed, it was about survival. If he didn't win, there might not be another race. That pressure helped him in becoming a true legend. By his late teenage years, Schumacher graduated from karting to Formula Ford and Formula Koenig, Germany's entry-level single-seater series. There, his dominance only grew. In 1987, he became German karting champion. In 1989, he won the German Formula 3 championship, a title that announced to the racing world that a king was coming. Mercedes noticed his talent. They pulled him into their junior sports car program, which was a weird choice since most young drivers avoided endurance racing as it would block their Formula One dreams. But Michael wasn't like the others. He saw it as training. Long races taught him precision, patience, and strategy. He wasn't just learning how to drive, he was learning how to win at any cost. And then his fate delivered the chance of a lifetime. It was 1991. The Belgian Grand Prix at Spa-Francorchamps, which is one of the most feared and demanding tracks in the world. Jordan, a small and struggling Formula One team, suddenly faced a crisis. Their regular driver, Bertrand Gachot, had been arrested in London after an altercation which left the team without a driver just days before the race. They needed someone to fill the seat. That someone turned out to be Michael Schumacher, a name barely known outside the junior circuits. He was about to make his Formula One debut on one of the toughest tracks ever built, in a car he had never driven before. The odds were placed against him. He had never raced at Spa in Formula One. He had no experience with the Jordan machinery, and he had only one chance to prove himself. If he failed, his Formula One dream could vanish before it even began. But what happened next stunned the entire paddock. Qualifying day arrived, and the paddock expected nothing. A rookie with no F1 experience in an underfunded Jordan car? Surely he would start at the back. But then something extraordinary happened. Michael Schumacher, in his very first qualifying session, placed the car 7th on the grid, higher than anyone thought possible. In a single afternoon, he announced himself to Formula One. Fans were wondering who this kid was. Though his race ended early due to clutch failure, it didn't matter. One weekend was enough. Schumacher had shown raw speed, intelligence, and fearlessness that couldn't be ignored. In just a matter of days, Jordan lost their rookie star because a bigger team had already made their move. Benetton wasted no time. They signed Schumacher almost immediately, snatching him from Jordan after just one race. And with Benetton, his rise was incredible. By 1992, he had already won his first Formula One Grand Prix at Spa, the same track where he made his debut. It wasn't just ironic, in fact, it was a warning to the rest of the grid. Michael Schumacher had arrived, and he was here to dominate. Then came the year 1994 that changed everything. The season was darkened by a tragedy. Ayrton Senna, one of the greatest F1 icons, lost his life at Imola. With Senna's death, the spotlight shifted to Schumacher, who was fighting for his first world championship. But controversy followed him due to his aggressive defending, on-track collisions, and aggressive tactics. To some, he was a hero. To others, he was a villain who would do anything to win. Yet in the end, the record books showed the truth. Michael Schumacher became the 1994 Formula One world champion. In 1995, he silenced the doubters by proving it was no coincidence. He won again. Back-to-back titles at just 26 years old. 2 world championships, countless victories, and a reputation as the wild competitor on the grid. The racing world had a new king in the making. But his destiny wasn't with Benetton. His eyes were set on something bigger, something greater, and that was Ferrari. At that time, Ferrari was a giant in name, but broken in spirit. For over 20 years, they hadn't won a single driver's championship. Their cars were unreliable, their team was broken, and their legacy was fading. Joining Ferrari in 1996 wasn't seen as a move to win. It was seen as career suicide. No champion had dared to risk it. But Schumacher was no ordinary champion. He didn't just want to win races, he wanted to rebuild an empire. So, he took the risk. His first seasons were brutal. The car broke down often, sometimes before the race even began. Rivals laughed. Critics said he had made the biggest mistake of his career. Yet race after race, Schumacher dragged that red car beyond its limits. Against faster machines, he snatched podiums. Against impossible odds, he stole victories. His willpower was forcing Ferrari back to life. When Schumacher arrived at Ferrari in 1996, he didn't just bring his driving talent, he also brought a vision. What Ferrari needed was not just a driver, but a family, a team that trusted each other completely. So piece by piece, Schumacher constructed his army. First came Ross Brawn, the strategist he had worked with at Benetton. Brawn was a master tactician who was able to read a race like a chessboard and make calls that turned defeat into victory. Then came Rory Byrne, the engineering genius. Byrne didn't design cars, he designed weapons, machines tailored perfectly to Michael's classy style. At the top of it all stood Jean Todt, Ferrari's team principal. Todt was a man of discipline and order, the prime leader who turned Ferrari from chaos into precision. Together, they became something Formula One had never seen before. Each man played his role to perfection. Schumacher pushed the car to its absolute limit. Byrne made it faster, Brawn made it smarter, and Todt made sure the entire machine moved as one. Rival teams had stars, but Ferrari had a dynasty in the making. The rebuilding years were tough. Cars broke, championships slipped away. But with every failure came learning. With every near miss came growth. By the late 1990s, Ferrari wasn't just improving, they were becoming inevitable. And then the floodgates opened. The year 2000 marked the beginning of an era that terrified the world of Formula One. Schumacher, alongside with his dream team, finally broke Ferrari's curse, winning their first driver's title in 21 years. It was a revolution for Ferrari. From that moment, Formula One was no longer a battleground. It was a showcase of Ferrari's supremacy. 2000, 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in a row, Schumacher crushed every rival who dared to challenge him. The peak came in 2004. Out of 18 races, Schumacher won 13. Sometimes he crossed the finish line half a minute ahead of the field. Sometimes his strategy, guided by Ross Brawn, outsmarted rivals before the race had even reached halfway. It wasn't just domination, it was humiliation. His competitors weren't fighting for victory anymore. They were fighting for second place. The Ferrari F2004 became a legendary machine which was so fast that it is still regarded as one of the greatest Formula One cars ever built. Even decades later, its lap record stood strong, untouched, until Mercedes' hybrid dominance in 2020. Between 2000 and 2004, Schumacher and Ferrari didn't just win, they rewrote history. 5 straight championships, added to the 2 he'd already earned at Benetton, brought his total to 7 world titles and 91 victories. At that time, nobody could even imagine another driver reaching those heights. Michael Schumacher wasn't just the king of Formula One, he was Formula One itself. But as history has always shown, even the mightiest empires cannot last forever. But behind the dominance, time was catching up. Ferrari's empire had begun to show cracks. In 2005, new regulations weakened their invincible car. In 2006, despite Schumacher's unbelievable performance, Schumacher faced a new rival, Fernando Alonso, the young Spanish star who wasn't terrified by Ferrari's legend. That season was a field of chaos. Schumacher fought with everything he had, winning races against the odds, keeping the title fight alive until the final rounds. But an engine failure in Japan ended his hopes. The championship slipped away. And so, in 2006, after more than a decade of dominance, Michael Schumacher announced his retirement.
To make it short, in a way, this is going to be my last Monza race.
Fans were shocked by his decision. Rivals were happy. The sport itself seemed nothing without him. At 37, the king had laid down his crown, or so everyone thought. For 3 years, Schumacher lived away from the spotlight. He stayed close to racing, working with Ferrari, appearing at events, but his fire that had made him unstoppable seemed at rest. Then came 2010. Mercedes, returning to Formula One as a full works team, wanted more than just a car. They wanted a symbol, a leader who could guide them into a new era. And they had one name in mind, Michael Schumacher. When the news broke, the world was stunned. Schumacher, the legend, the retired champion, was coming back. At 41 years old, he was about to race against a new generation of drivers half his age. The only question in everyone's mind was, could the old king rise again? Because Formula One had changed. Cars were different, the rules were different, rivals were sharper. And Schumacher, though still brilliant, wasn't the same man who had once ruled the sport. During his 3 seasons with Mercedes, he fought hard, showed glimpses of his old magic, even took a historic pole position in Monaco 2012 as a proof that his speed never truly left him. But podiums and victories remained out of reach. For the first time in his career, Schumacher wasn't fighting for titles. He was helping build something bigger than himself. And ironically, that something would become the most dominant team Formula One had ever seen. The Mercedes dynasty of Hamilton and Rosberg years later stood on the foundation Schumacher had laid. By 2012, Schumacher knew the time had truly come. He announced his second and final retirement.
I've decided to retire by the end of the year.
This time, there would be no return, or so it seemed. In December 2013, a tragedy happened that changed his life. Michael Schumacher was far from the racetrack, skiing with his family in the French Alps. For a man who had conquered every danger Formula One could throw at him, it seemed like an ordinary day, but his luck was cruel. He suffered from a head injury while saving his friend's daughter that changed everything. The news shocked the world. The invincible legend who had surpassed death at over 300 kilometers per hour on racetracks across the globe now lay fighting for his life after a simple skiing accident. Schumacher was placed in a medically induced coma, and the world held its breath. Since then, updates on his condition have been rare, guarded closely by his family. Fans still chant his name at every race. Banners still fly with his iconic red Ferrari helmet. Because Michael Schumacher is more than just a driver. He is a symbol of greatness, of relentless pursuit, of a man who gave everything to his sport. Michael Schumacher's journey was never just about racing. It was about a boy from a small German town who turned discarded kart parts into the foundation of a dynasty. It was about the rise of Ferrari, the building of Mercedes, and the rewriting of Formula One history. And maybe that's the final truth of his story. Michael Schumacher may no longer race, he may no longer speak, but his legacy still drives Formula One forward. Because as they say, kings may fall, but their myths live forever. So guys, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this story, and if you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts below. And I'll see you in the next one.